The injuries are starting to mount up for Nottingham Forest as Taiwo is out as well. And there are also many players about to leave. We've got it all covered for you here on your latest Nottingham Forest news. All right, so let's start with the injuries. And the biggest injury at the moment, or the newest, should I say, is that of Taiwo. Taiwo has come back, been sent back from the Nigerian International team with a suspected groin injury. Now, this injury sounds like it's related to the thing that's kept him out over the last few weeks. And what Cooper has cryptically, hinted at is that Taiwo probably needs surgery. And this one does infuriate me. Why? Because if Taiwo was nursing an injury, and we know he wasn't back to full fitness as we played Villa and when we lost to West Ham, then why was he sent away on international duty in the first place? It really stinks to me of when Niakhate got close to being fit last season and was sent off to the Senegal international team just before the World Cup and then further injured himself and we didn't see him for months. So why was Taiwo initially sent out or released to the Nigerian team? Was it his call or was it our medical team that cleared him to go ahead? Especially with all the cryptic messages we got from Steve Cooper about the likelihood is that he's going to need surgery. Now, here's the thing. If Taiwo has come back injured and you've got the African Cup of Nations coming up in January, then for me, just get his surgery done now. And let's have him fully fit and recovered come the end of January or however long this groin injury may take for him to recover. But it is clear to see that he needs injury. And I'm sorry, I know I don't know all the details, but if he has been released and we know what we know about him, then there has been some incompetency done by the medical team or by the club. And this is something that's historical now over our time in the Premier League, where we had God knows how many injuries last season. We had players getting injured on the pitch, players getting injured on the training ground, and it was just a continuous cycle of players going down. And we're starting to see it again. Yes, I know I said the thing was sensationalized from the stats that Forest had the third worst injury record this season. That is technically true. But there are some injuries that we still don't know much about. Felipe, for example, he's still out, but we see him week in, week out in the training videos. Where is he? There's also talks that he's going to be leaving Nottingham Forest. We did a video on that last week if you want the details on it. You've got the other key injuries we have. It's Callum Hudson-Odoi. He's been ruled out. He's got, 6 weeks on his hamstring. So he hopefully should be a lot closer to coming back now because that's been about 4 weeks since he's gone out injured. You got Montiel, the forgotten right back, who had a calf injury and we haven't seen since the previous international break with no major updates on where he is either. So these injuries are piling up, but they aren't as many as the press or certain outlets are trying to kind of sensationalize them to be. The problem we've got is they are in key positions and we are very, very thin up front. So with Taiwo out, with Callum Hudson-Odoi out, with Elanga, who did pick up a knock but was able to play against West Ham, so he's okay. That's really our front three. Obviously, Morgan Gibbs-White as well. And that leaves us with our backup. And our only backup currently is Chris Wood and Origi, neither of which I think are first-team players. Origi, okay, you could argue, hasn't had a run in the team to prove himself. And Chris Wood, when he's had his moments, has scored goals so far this season. But he too has been in and out with injuries over the last few weeks. So is there still this fundamental issue with Nottingham Forest and the medical staff when it comes to these injuries being picked up? And for us to yet again be at the higher end of the table you don't want to be in terms of total injuries, is this being looked at by the club? And is this something the club can improve on? In my opinion, it's something they should definitely improve on. It can't be kept saying that injuries are just unlucky, that these things happen, next man up and all that stuff, all that rhetoric we normally hear. There has to be something done. We do know that they brought in one of the Chelsea lead medical staff this start of this season, and that doesn't seem to have improved anything too much. But what do you guys think about these injuries? And this thing with Taiwo, is the thing, in my opinion, that's going to trigger Forest into forcibly having to go into the market in January to sign another striker. And we did a video on the strikers that are heavily linked with Forest yesterday. If you haven't caught that, make sure you check it out. I'll leave a link for it on the end screen at the end of this video. But that's where we are with injuries. And let's just hope the rest of them come back without any problems in this goddamn international break. Okay, so that's the injuries done. Let's move on and talk about players that are leaving Nottingham Forest. And there is going to need to be a bit of an exodus this January, as Forest is so bloated in terms of squad players, and players will need to be sold. Unfortunately, one of the ones that looks like he's definitely going because fees have been agreed is Gustavo Scarpa. Scarpa, who came to Forest about this time last year, well, about December time, and then didn't get a chance in the first team, played a handful of games, made a handful of substitute appearances, and then was shipped off in the summer to the Greeks. Even there, he hasn't been able to consistently hold down a first team position. And it is seemed that he is now going back to South America, and he is going to Atletico Mineiro. Now, Forest will get a fee for this because he is still under contract, and the fee is reported to be somewhere in the region of £4.5 to £5 million. Now, with Scarpa joining Forest on a free transfer, you could argue that that's not bad business if Steve Cooper isn't willing to play him. And I kind of do slightly agree with that. If he isn't going to get a chance, if he isn't going to be played and there's a willing suitor for him, then I can see why he's being sold. My big issue with this is even if you don't think he's good enough for the first team, surely you can agree that he should be in the squad as a backup to someone like Morgan Gibbs-White or one of the wingers, because Scarpa can play in either the 10, the right-hand side or the left-hand side. He's very versatile in a position where we are really thin right now. So whatever the reason Cooper has for not wanting Scarpa, it looks like Scarpa is done and on his way for about $5 million. The fee in itself, if you take out the sentiment of it, is not bad at all. But don't think that it's a free, flat-out $5 million that Forest are getting. Scarpa was on 30k a week. He would have had a signing-on bonus as well. All those things add up. So Forest will come out of this with slight profit, but not as much as the $5 million. Now, the real question is, how do you guys feel about Scarpa going back to South America? I wonder how the Palmeiras fans feel about it, seeing that he's not going back to Palmeiras and he's going to a different club. But do you guys think he had a fair opportunity in the Premier League at Forest to show his skills? And his skills cannot be argued. But what do you guys think about Scarpa going? Let me know in the comments down below. Alrighty, so let's move on and talk about the next player that's set to leave Nottingham Forest, and that is Awoniyi McKenna, who has been heavily linked with a move to the Turks with Fenerbahce. Excuse me. Now, how much and will this likely happen? There's a couple of questions here to be had. Firstly, Scott McKenna is worth about £8 million. The problem Forest have got is that he's only got until the end of this season left under his contract. Therefore, come January, he could technically negotiate a free move away from Nottingham Forest. That would obviously happen in the summer. But it looks like McKenna is keen to get himself some footballing time and will look to move in January. And therefore, Forest will be able to get a fee off him. Now, we have seen a weird trend in the last year where players who are, left with 1 year on their contract, etc., are still pulling quite a big transfer fee. I'll give you the example of Havertz going to Arsenal. You've got Mason Mount as well going to Manchester United, all pulling decent amount of fees for a player who's very, very low on their contract. Now, with McKenna, he will be even less, obviously, at 6 months. And although he is worth $8 million, I would be very surprised if Forest could get that much money for him, especially as he is not even really a regular currently in the Forest first team. So I expect this one to be done for about £2 to £4 million. Again, not huge money, but technically it's better than losing him for a free come the summer. So how do I feel about Scott McKenna going? For me, he was one of our best players in the Championship, especially in that promotion season. But Premier League has been, in my opinion, a step too far for him. And you could say that about a number of the other players we currently have in the squad. And I could see potentially not just McKenna going, but a couple of others. And the big talking point for me would be what happens with the future of Joe Worrall. Joe Worrall, who has signed an extension to his current contract and therefore won't be free to leave at the end of this year, is not currently able to get himself into the starting 11. In fact, he can't even get himself into the matchday squad currently, and he is the official club captain. So is there a future for Joe Worrall at Nottingham Forest? One of the big plus points for Joe Worrall is that he is homegrown and ticks that box. And you obviously have to have, I think it's 8 players or 13, I can't remember off the top of my head, that need to be registered as homegrown. And therefore, that is a huge positive point for him. But that should not necessitate that that's the reason he stays. If he is not part of Steve Cooper's plans going forward, then in my opinion, Worrall should be sold as well. We have too many centre backs. With Nino coming in, maybe he's going to the Greeks, maybe he's staying at Forest. We're not clear on that yet. You've got Bolly getting on in years. You've got Felipe, who looks injured and could be going to the Greeks in January. Therefore, we do need the likes of Nino to come in. But will Worrall stay or go? My feeling is he's going nowhere currently. My move would be to move him on, especially as we could get a bit of money out of him with his contract still having a couple of years left to run on it. Is that harsh, seeing that he's just signed his contract? Yeah, probably, but there's no room really for sentiment in the Premier League. So McKenna looks like he's on his way out. There does need to be more players cleared out. Forest have so many players out on loan at the moment, some of which we're paying their wages for, some of which we're paying 50%, etc. And these players have to be moved on. You're talking about the likes of Dennis. You're talking about the likes of Shelvey. You're talking about, everyone's forgetting about Josh Bowler, who's apparently doing well on his move. Lewis O'Brien, all these forgotten players. And the ones that are at the Greeks as well in Omar Richards and a lot of the kids. These players have to be moved on in this January transfer window or brought back to be used in the squad. Out of those players that have been loaned out, is there any that you would like to see back at Nottingham Forest? Let me know in the comments down below. This is only November. We haven't even got to the transfer window fully opening up yet, and there are loads of stories about incomings and outgoings for Nottingham Forest. From everything we've told you this week so far, who would be your favourite to come in? Let me know in the comments down below. That brings you up to date on your Forest transfer news and injury update. If you've enjoyed the video and you haven't already, please don't forget to hit that like button. Subscribe to Forest Fan TV if you are new, and we'll see you on the next video. Come on, you Reds.